Okay, here's 7.3. Let's call a polar form of a complex number. So we just talked briefly about polar coordinates, about r and theta. Now, we went from x and y to r and theta a little while ago, or the section before this. Except now we're going to call x plus yi. So x and y, instead of y world, we're still going to call it x and y, right and left, up and down, that kind of stuff. But we're going to call an imaginary number as a point in x and y world, rectangular world. So 2 comma 3, which is the point 23, is now going to be the point 2 plus square root of 3i. Sorry, 2 plus 3i. So this is going to represent the real part. This is going to be the I part. So it's the I and the real part. So down here, -4 comma -2 is the same thing as -4 minus 2i. So complex number. So it's going to be the same thing. So x equals r cosine theta, y equals r sine theta, r squared is x equals y squared. Tangent theta is y over x over r is cosine, y over r is sine, r equals square root of x squared plus y squared. So this is something that essentially you might want to have in mind here. So as it were, x plus yi to polar form. X plus yi. X is understood to be r cosine theta. So this is r cosine theta plus r sine theta I. So they both. So that's what it is here. But you understand they both share an r in common. So complex form to polar form. X plus yi becomes r parentheses cosine plus I sine theta. This is c, then followed by I, followed by s. So when you take out the r, x plus yi is equal to r parentheses cosine theta plus I sine theta. So r cis theta for short. So cis means cosine plus I sine theta. So example, I want to convert this to polar form. So 2 minus 2i. I'm going to use the fact that r is the square root of x squared plus y squared. So x and y, 2 negative 2. That becomes square root of 8, or just 2 square root of 2, because it simplifies. Tangent of theta then is negative 2 over positive 2, which is negative 1. Tan inverse of negative 1 is negative 45, which you're down here, which that's where you are, 2 minus 2i. So you're in the fourth quadrant, but you want the positive counterpart. So you're going to add 360, so it's 315. So 2 square root of 2 is r. 315 is theta. So again, because we can write it as r cis theta, it becomes 2 square root of 2 cis 315. Or you can write it the long way, 2 square root of 2 times cosine 315 plus I sine of 315. What if you want the square root of 3 plus I? Now, if x is the square root of 3 and y is 1, square root of 3 squared is 3, 1 squared is 1, 3 plus 1 is 4, square root of 4 is 2. Tangent of theta is is y over x, excuse me. So 1 over the square root of 3. So theta is tan inverse of square root of 3 over 3 when you solve for theta. That's your 30 degrees. 30 degrees is positive. So the cis is 2 cis of 30. Again, this is theta, and this is r. So r cis theta. So you're trying to get some a plus bi into r cis theta. That is complex numbers, the polar form, essentially. So rectangular to polar. That's what you're trying to do. You're trying to do the polar. These are the polar forms. This is the polar form, and this is the polar form of your rectangular numbers, or of your complex numbers. Complex numbers being imaginary. And if you want to convert back from r cis theta to x plus yi, what you're going to do is you're going to say that x is r cosine theta and y is r sine theta. Well, r is going to be here, and theta is going to be here. So r is 6, theta is 45. So 6 times cosine of 45. 45's cosine is square root of 2 over 2. 2 goes into 6 3 times, so this is 3 square root of 2. Sine of 45 is also the same as cosine of 45, which is square root of 2 over 2. times 6, that's 3 square root of 2. So there's your x and y coordinate. So this works out to be 3 square root of 2 plus 3 square root of 2i, or 3 square root of 2 comma 3 square root of 2. So now 4 cis of 300. R is 4. Theta is 300. So you just give x equals r cosine theta, y equals r sine theta. So 4 cosine 300, 4 sine of 300. Cosine of 300 is a half because it's the cosine of 60. And in the fourth quadrant, so cosine is positive. So 4 times a half is 2. Sine of 300 is square root of 3 over 2 because sine of 60 is square root of 3 over 2, but you're in the fourth quadrant and sine is negative there. So this is negative 2 square root of 3. So you're going to have the imaginary number or complex number 2 minus 2 square root of 3i. It's when we're doing with polar. So that's your imaginary number. Again, 2 comma negative 2 square root of 3. That's x and y. So a little bit very similar to polar, very similar. And now what happens if you want to multiply or divide imaginary numbers? Well, here's the nice thing. If you want to multiply rectangular numbers, you can change it. You understand, like if you have 2 plus 3i and you don't want to deal with it, you can change it to r and theta. Makes it easier to work with sometimes. Or r and theta, sometimes it's hard to work with. You change it to imaginary numbers. Deal with that. Everybody's different. So if you multiply two polar numbers, r1 cis theta 1 times r2 cis theta 2, it turns out that you multiply the r's, r1 times r2, and take the cis of the sum of the thetas. You add the thetas, you add the angles. So you multiply the numbers on the outside and you add the angles on the inside. Well, in division then, instead of multiplying and adding, division, you actually divide and subtract, top minus the bottom. Just to give an example of each type, multiplication and division. I'm sorry, multiplication, yeah. So if I'm multiplying these two polar numbers, I'm going to multiply the 2 and the 4, r1 times r2. Then I'm going to take the cis of these two angles added. So 71 plus 79 is 150. So this becomes very simply 8 cis of 150. Instead of stopping here, normally that would be your answer, but you have to put it back in terms of x and y. So you want the imaginary part. So you take 8 times what? Cosine of theta, which is cosine of 150. At y will be 8 times sine of 150. Cosine of 150 is negative square root of 3 over 2. Sine of 150 is 1/2. So the 2 goes into 8 twice. This is negative 4 square root of 3. 2 goes into 8 4 times. Essentially, this is just 4. Positive 4. So negative 4 square root of 3 plus 4i. The x and the y. Again, x plus yi. Here's your x. Here's your y. Or here is your y. And that is how this works. So when you multiply polar numbers, polar form, multiply, or when you this is imaginary numbers in polar form. So this is kind of cool because to multiply imaginary numbers, that's you get back another imaginary number. Because remember, these are also complex numbers, but they're in polar form. They're complex numbers in complex form, in standard form. Here, division. Here's division. So 12 divided by 6 is 2. And now you take the top angle and subtract the bottom angle. 196 minus 106 is 90. Cosine of 90 is 0. Sine of 90 is 1. So the x value is 0. The y value is 6. So the point 0 plus 6i, or 6i. That is standard form. That's what it wants. And this essentially puts us where we need to be in the world of chapter 7.